Hello and welcome to The Agenda. I'm Stephen Cole, and this week it's time to talk plastic as we consider how close we might be to winning the war on waste. A new report suggests 1 billion tonnes of plastic could end up in our oceans by 2040. We'll speak to its lead investigator. We'll also ask whether a new approach to recycling could be the answer. Or is science the only way forward? We join the hunt for truly biodegradable plastic. 2020 was supposed to be the year the world finally got a grip on the problem of discarded plastic. It's urgent because reports suggest that by 2050 there could be more plastic in our oceans than fish. In January, China announced plans to ban non-degradable bags in major cities by the end of this year. In February, the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act was introduced to the US Congress, designed to make producers of plastic packaging responsible for the cost of disposal or recycling. The UK also said it would ban single-use plastic straws, stirrers and cotton buds by April this year. But then, along came COVID-19, and the UK postponed its ban, and lawmakers in the US had other things to focus on. Initially, it seemed there might be an environmental silver lining to the pandemic, with carbon emissions falling by around 4%, as heavy industry around the world fell almost silent. But then it became clear that the 129 billion face masks and 65 billion pairs of plastic gloves the world was now using every month had to be disposed of somewhere, and many have ended up littering the world's streets or in the world's seas. And that's rolling back progress that had already been made on the plastic pollution crisis. The COVID-related collapse in the oil market made plastic cheaper than ever to produce, and as we pitched into a global recession, suddenly affordability and ease of use was driving our purchasing decisions rather more than environmental considerations. It's clear that alongside the changes to our lifestyle caused by the pandemic, everyone around the world is going to have to change their approach to plastic too. And as governments continue to tackle the COVID crisis, they also need to look harder and more urgently at legislation to end reliance on single-use plastics. A new digital model which tracks the movement of plastic rubbish around the world has found that between 2016 and 2040, an estimated 961 million tonnes will have been discarded into the environment. And that's the focus of a recent report entitled Breaking the Plastic Wave. Here with me to outline the report's key findings is its lead researcher, Dr Costas Velis from Leeds University. Dr Velis, your new modelling system allows us to have a far clearer picture of the sources of plastic pollution and, of course, where it ends up. But will that help us to reduce the amount of plastic waste?
There is always a distance between theoretical calculations and action in this world. However, with the benefit of the model we have produced and the calculations we have performed and the results we have at hand, we have now the possibility to understand the magnitude of the challenge, which hopefully will urge us to act in an immediate, concerted, and decisive manner. Of course, it's down to the governments, it's down to the companies, it's down to the institutions, but also to individuals to act. So I don't know is the honest answer, but I have high hopes that we are in better position now to act than we were before the release of this study.
But your report suggests no single solution can work. So what do we need to do? Is there a single way, the strongest way we can move forward to reduce waste?
So we need a combination, we need a whole suite of solutions that should put in place in parallel in order to massively mitigate the amount of plastic pollution. And let me explain where these could be. Starting from circular economy solutions, so producing less plastic in the very first place, replacing it with other materials, although this poses a lot of wider sustainability questions there, and eventually delivering waste collection to the 2 billion people fellow humans, fellow citizens of this planet, whose waste is not collected, recycling far more, safely disposing of the material that we cannot economically and technically recycle.
So a totally new systemic change, but how is that going to be put in place?
Indeed, we need a systemic change, and indeed it's not going to be easy because it requires major change in the way we produce, we consume, and we return what we would used to call waste, and now we try to think of after-use resources back into the economy in a way that is both technically and economically feasible. Let me give you a couple of examples there of the level of innovation, the type of innovation that we would need. For example, when it comes to plastics, we have to redesign the plastics, the materials, and the products from the very first stage with in mind their recycling, their returning back into the economy for multiple material cycles. But there's also social innovation, or there is action for the governments, legal and other type of action. For example, the informal recycling sector, the waste pickers, these are the unsung heroes of circular economy of the global south. They're often prosecuted or ignored at best by the governments. Still, they're saving so much plastic from becoming plastic pollution.
When you talked earlier about what needs to be done, and you, like most people, say, well, governments need to work harder at this. But it's not just governments, is it? It's governments, it's big business, it's people like you and I. We all have to work together in this war on plastic pollution. But when you're compiling your report, do you see a will to do that?
It's an issue of action at multiple levels, and we all share responsibility. However, the ability to act and the results of our actions are different for different actors and stakeholders. That has to be made absolutely clear, and all the efforts should be transferred to individuals or to governments or to the industry or to academics. So I would say we see an action from all stakeholders. It is up to the level that we need. In some sense, no, it is not. And that's why our effort and our results there ring a bell that, look, we know it's a problem. We know it's a massive global challenge. We're not doing enough at the moment. And the business as usual, even with the existing commitments, is not good enough to mitigate the problem.
Dr. Velis, many thanks for joining us on The Agenda. If the world is ever to end its reliance on single-use plastics, we're going to have to find more environmentally friendly solutions to our packaging needs. One company hoping to help with that is Symphony Environmental, and here with me to explain just how they might succeed is the company's chief executive, Michael Laurier. Michael, your company makes so-called oxo-biodegradable plastics using an additive called D2W. So what does that do, and how does it work?
D2W, what does it mean? It's actually the international symbol that's used in nearly 100 countries globally that signifies it's got this technology inside. It's an additive. That's what D2W is. That is mixed in during the ordinary plastic manufacturing process. That additive, when the plastic ends up into the open environment, rapidly makes the plastic go through an oxidation process. And through that process, the plastic changes from a plastic material to biodegradable compounds, like a leaf. It's then going to biodegrade because it becomes a food source for microbes. And that can be on land and in the oceans. That's what we do. We treat ordinary plastics at the manufacturing stage, so that anything that's made using our technology, single-use plastics, it will then degrade, it will then biodegrade. So as we say to a lot of people around the world, you don't need to ban plastics because all other alternatives are not just expensive, they're actually harmful for the environment. Some giving out more CO2, some with much larger footprints, life cycle assessment footprints, but cost, recycling, other negative issues as a result of moving away.
How long's the process for the plastic to biodegrade then, if they use D2W?
We can make the plastic as a plastic material degrade to a biodegradable compound in less than 3 to 4 months. That is quite
That
amazing.
sounds extremely quick to me.
Yes, it is, because we can define the product that's been made, we can define the UV radiation, we can define the temperatures. But the biodegradation is a different kettle of fish, because for biodegradation, we've turned that plastic into a food source. We're actually returning the carbon back into nature. So the biodegradation would depend on the amount of microbes available at the time. Do they really want that material? Are there other materials for them to eat? Are they hungry enough? So you can never really define the speed of biodegradation in the open environment. But what's important is you've actually, with this technology, changed that plastic to a material no longer a plastic. It's no longer harmful. Nobody really worries how long a leaf will take to biodegrade, and nobody really worries too much how a biodegradable compound, natural compounds, and I think we've identified up to 2,000 different compounds that can be created through this process.
It sounds, Michael, as though you have found the perfect solution to plastic pollution. But the EU isn't convinced, is it? The EU Commission has claimed there's no evidence these bags will fully biodegrade in a reasonable time, and they're not a solution for the environment. How are you managing, or what would you say to manage those concerns?
Well, if you're referring to the SUP directive, which causes considerable international confusion, because the words they use is that they are encouraging EU members through the SUP directive to ban a product that they called oxo-degradable. Oxo-degradable is actually ordinary plastics with an additive maybe inside that will make the plastic not biodegrade, which is why the words biodegradable doesn't even come into it. It cannot be recycled, which is another criteria, and it's got no environmental benefits, basically is what the EU directive says. In other words, it's complete opposite to what's proven in relation to our technology. Now, our technology is actually described by the Central European normalization as oxo-biodegradable. In other words, is oxidation that leads to biodegradation. But the same normalization system describes oxo-degradable, which is what the EU, quite rightly, is looking to ban. A product that doesn't go through biodegradation, it just degrades to microplastics, pieces of plastic, but it still remains a plastic. Our technology does not remain as a plastic. It converts to a compound.
I see.
But of course, the intention of the EU, through very, very hard lobbying from the organizations that create paper or that create crop-based materials, don't want to see an oxo-biodegradable product.
Why do we face such a massive problem of plastic pollution if, as you say, this has been worked on and has been successfully used since the 1970s when Aston University, I take it it's the Aston University in the West Midlands, came up with the technology?
Well, we have a huge problem with plastics. It's like with everything. We can see more, we can communicate more, and it's obvious that plastic is not using this technology, it's not being collected, and it accumulates. If we were able to collect more, if we were able to reprocess more, and if we treated all our plastics with this technology, there wouldn't be a problem.
Michael Laurier, CEO of Symphony Environmental, many thanks to you for joining us on The Agenda.
With great pleasure.
Still to come here on The Agenda, why turning plastic into cash could be the winning salvo in the war on waste. We'll be talking to the CEO of the Plastic Bank.
The world has changed under the pressure of the pandemic. For many of us, life is returning to some kind of normal. As we're adapting to changes in all of our lives, let Global Business Europe be your guide to the new normal. Join us weekdays on CGTN.
Welcome back to the agenda. The recycling of existing plastics is, of course, key to the future of our planet. But with a recent report suggesting nearly a third of the plastic exported for recycling from Europe every year ends up in landfill rather than being recycled, well, that means there's clearly a long way to go. Joining me now from Vancouver in Canada is a man hoping to help with that process, David Katz. David is the Chief Executive of Plastic Bank. David Katz, you are the founder, described as a compassionate entrepreneur. What does Plastic Bank do?
You know, we have to recognize not only is recycling critically important for the world, but most of the world doesn't have access to recycling. Set aside what is being exported around the world. The rest of the developing world, the billions of people, can't even dream of the idea of recycling, nor would they. And we're focused on stopping plastic from entering the ocean. It's one thing to go and try to clean it, which is futile. Or what we can do is prohibit it from entering the ocean. What we've done is we've created a global chain of stores for the poor, for the ultra poor, under $2 a day, where everything in this store can be purchased using plastic garbage. You see, it's garbage is money, Stephen. It's access to school tuition, medical insurance, Wi-Fi, cooking fuel, groceries, everything the poor truly need now available using the garbage that all of us have in the past put in the bin, but now returned for recycling. And that material we collect, we sell to great companies like Henkel, M&S in the past, and others. They use it back into their packaging, really creating a spot for the circular economy.
Whereabouts in the world are you mainly operating so far?
Well, we began in Haiti, which is a crazy place to start any business, the most impoverished community country in the Western Hemisphere. And from there, we went to the Philippines, and then we went to Indonesia and Brazil, and then Egypt, and now we're just moving into Vietnam, and we've made some commitments into Cameroon, and from Cameroon we see an opportunity moving into Thailand. You know, the whole world needs us. It's a little difficult to even choose where to go, but there's dire need wherever there's poverty and material entering the ocean is where we need to be. I mean, we have to be around the world truly.
Why are you doing this, David? This is a job for governments, isn't it?
Wouldn't you think so? We would hope that this idea, this economic opportunity, this lift that's created in societies would be something that people would be thinking of. But look at Haiti. It's such an impoverished community. They don't have enough money for clean water or food. The last thing that they're thinking about is recycling. Even the solid waste is basically a truck with guys with shovels that go through the streets. It seems to be an endeavor that is hard to tackle for some, but private business, social enterprise, ones with soul, ones with the knowing that the more abundance they create for the world, the more that they can create for themselves as well. That's what we're doing. We can't wait for government. None of us can wait for anything. I mean, what the ocean can't wait, that's for sure. And so there's immediacy, and we would hope that government at some point would begin doing what we do as well. How super important. Everyone needs to be a part of the solution and not the pollution, Stephen.
Do you think we'll ever reach a point where we'll ever have a real secular plastic waste-free economy? And if we don't in the near future, what's going to happen?
We're powerfully are going to have a world not without plastic as many people want, but we would definitely have a world without waste. That certainly is occurring. And what I am witnessing is the regenerative economy, the regenerative society, where organizations today who really truly want to powerfully compete. See, the blue ocean strategy, pardon the pun, is of that of regeneration. The organizations that are going to win are going to be the ones that aren't just talking sustainability, the conversation of I'll do less damage this year than last year, But the ones that'll win are the ones that are coming forward to say, I'm going to repair the damage that's been done. Not only am I going to repair the damage that's been done, but I'll repair the damage that my competitors have done as well. Regeneration is what's occurring. Circularity is what's occurring. And I know that at some time in the future, the conversation of taking our stuff out to the curb where it goes out to a landfill, that's done. It's begun now, Stephen.
You know, David, I'm looking at a list now of the number of awards. I mean, recipient of the UN Lighthouse Award for Planetary Health, recipient of Paris Climate Conference Sustainability Award, recipient of the Ernst & Young Lifetime Achievement. I mean, so many awards. So you're obviously doing a very important job. But is this really your job? And if it isn't the government's job, if they're not doing it, what about big business? Surely, you're an entrepreneur. If big business got involved around the world, we'd see a change almost overnight, wouldn't we?
We're here because of big business. Of course it's their responsibility. We're here strictly as a result of shareholder return first. How might we sell more, distribute more, gain more market, add to an additional quarterly result? You know, around the world, there are these little, what's termed multi-layer sachet, this little package sold to the poor for pennies, selling billions and billions every year from every consumer goods organization into every emerging economy, comprehensively non-recyclable, made that way so that it could hold high-quality printing. We can't be confused. It is as a result of big business, and it is big business that needs to step up and make change. Now, we certainly try to engage those who are powerfully participating, like Henkel, the family, is remarkably focused on sustainability and creating great change. SC Johnson, one of our customers, a family business as well, remarkably standing forward. It is the responsibility, Stephen, there should be no confusion.
David Katz, the founder and CEO of Plastic Bank. Many thanks for joining us on The Agenda.
Thank you, Stephen.
So, if you're not a scientist or plastics developer and still want to be a part of the war on plastic, where do you start? Well, to answer that, I'm joined now by Emily Penn, the founder of Exxx Petition, a company that organises all-female trips to explore the impact of plastics on our seas. Emily, first of all, what sparked your interest in the campaign against plastic?
I was actually on my way from England to Australia for a new job as an architect, and I decided I wanted to get there without taking an aeroplane. So I took a boat across the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans, and along the way started to see plastic in the most remote part of our planet. In particular, one morning when I jumped off the boat to go for a morning wash in the water, I found a toothbrush just floating by, and it just didn't make any sense.
But then you decided to form this expedition, didn't you?
Absolutely. There's so little we know about our planet and the fact that ocean covers 70% of our Earth. And, you know, we need to get out there and understand what's going on. So at the moment, we are sailing around the world, and we have 300 women joining us over the 2-year project. And we'll be going out to collect scientific samples to really understand what plastic is getting out there, and then ultimately how we can prevent it getting there in the first place.
And you started an online expedition, so to speak, called Shift, is it? What do you hope to achieve with that? What is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, we are currently land-bound because of the coronavirus crisis. You know, we are unable to carry on with our sailing. So we've moved our impact making virtually, and we've built this platform. It's all about helping people solve this plastics issue, because we realize that we all have an opportunity to do something. We all have a different, unique skill set. And it's a case of working out what role we can play in tackling the problem. And this website helps you navigate that process to find the solution that's most appropriate for you.
You've got, as you said, 300 envoys, if you like, ambassadors against plastic. But what do you hope to achieve really, with Shift. And what kind of pickup have you had from people so far?
Yeah, it's been amazing so far. I think there's so many people out there who want to do something. They get that there's a problem in the ocean of plastic, and they're saying, okay, well, I want to help, but I don't really know where to start. And so what we found is that if you can help people navigate that process, you have much better action and uptake in the end. And also that there's not one solution, there are hundreds, and that's the good news. You just need to be able to be working on your own piece. And so by having these 300 ambassadors, they all come from all over the world and from all different backgrounds and sectors. But by all working on their piece together, then we can really solve the problem.
So what should I and others be doing when we see plastic or buying anything in shops? What's your advice?
So the first thing we can all do is try to eliminate single-use plastic. It's that plastic that's in our lives for maybe just an hour or a day. And it's plastic that we can really live without. So something like a plastic bag or a water bottle, or certain types of packaging that you can actually buy food and produce without the plastic packaging. So avoid it as much as you can, and then start thinking about what bigger thing can I do? How can I influence the community that I live in, or the household that I run, or the school that my kids go to, and look at where larger impacts can be made as well, so that you can help others around you make a change.
But that's difficult, isn't it? Because a lot of people don't have that much choice, especially poorer countries, and they find plastic the most convenient way of usage.
That's absolutely right. And I certainly saw it when I sailed across the Pacific Ocean and we stopped at these islands, and we found that locals there were actually relying on importing packaged food and drink to be able to survive. And of course, it all comes wrapped in plastic, and there's not really any other option at the moment. So it is really important that we also work with industry, with businesses, and also the government on legislation, on saying what other options have we got, and how can we change our packaging and change our systems and our way of doing things, so that then we do have options all over the world.
Emily Penn, co-founder of Exxx Petition, many thanks for joining us on The Agenda.
Thanks a lot.
Plastic is arguably one of the world's greatest inventions. Its qualities allow it to be used in almost everything, from food packaging to clothes and cars. And that's the problem. Plastic is ubiquitous. It's very hard to get rid of, too. There is the technology and the knowledge to reduce our dependence, but joining those together to ensure we have a different take on plastic, well, that's still missing. Discarded plastic is clogging up streets, rivers and seas, and the world is trying to work out what the industry can do to restore a damaged reputation for littering and plastic pollution. But even if the will is there to reduce all that and recycle, the situation has worsened because of COVID. One European charity that cleans beaches says the pandemic has caused an explosion of discarded masks and plastics on beaches and in rivers, and that's rolling back progress which had already been made on the plastic pollution crisis. Scientists are developing new types of plastic that can be recycled, but the fact is, of the 350 million tons of plastic produced every year, only about 2% is actually recycled. We know what needs to be done, but it's clear governments, big industry, public health, and we, the public, have to work faster to find ways of reducing the plastic imprint left so indelibly on all our landscapes. Coming up on a future agenda. Ready to play? We take a look inside the multi-billion-dollar gaming industry. And don't forget, for more agenda content, you can visit our website, or you can follow CGTN Europe on Twitter and Facebook. But for now, from me, Stephen Cole, and all the Agenda team here in London, it's goodbye.